My first question is, I talked to Robert yesterday about the film, and he said he basically just had cold called you about it. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like when he called you and said, hey, I want to do a film on Bernie?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I know he called during the time that I was grieving, because I think Bernard had only been dead about a year. And I was still grieving. And then when he called, you know how you'd be kind of cautious of, like, who you're talking to and who has your number. I'm like, how did you get this number? And then he explained to me he went and talked to the, I think he got it through the publicist or something. And I said, oh, okay. Maybe he was legit then. And he started talking. And the more he talked and told me what he thought should come of the documentary and everything, I was very interested in it, and I thought, of course, Bernard didn't need a documentary done on him. He was such a great comedian and a great entertainer. Why not? So, and that's kind of how the ball started rolling.
Now, what was the process like, gathering all the, the memorabilia and the footage and whatnot?
Well, it wasn't hard to gather all the memorabilia. We have so much of it here at home because, like in his earlier years doing his comedy, he did a lot of recording on all of the things he did, like Midnight Mac, Milchoneers, the Cotton Club. So they did do a lot of video recording. So we had stacks and stacks of videotapes, and he took lots of pictures, so we had a lot of things to give Robert.
Okay.
Yeah, so that wasn't hard gathering it. I just had to remember, some of it is not dated, so you kind of got to go through it like, oh, I think this was before this or this was before that. But I gave him I remember as much information as he could take, as he could use, and then he could kind of figure out what he wanted to use from there.
Now, was it helpful to you at all in terms of an emotional lift to go through this with him?
You know what? I'm going to tell you, I do have a strong religious background. I believe in the Lord, and I know it is because of God that I'm still here and standing strong. So, but for me, it's always good to, I love to talk about him. I feel because he's always in my heart, I love to share stories about him, and it does help, and then to see him, it brings a smile to my face, even though it is sad, and sometimes it makes me sad because I think about him not being here and how my life has changed because he's not here, But for the most part, it's always good to see him on the screen, always good to hear his voice because, so many people don't have that opportunity when their loved one pass away to hear them or to see them. So I get to see him and hear him whenever I feel like it. So for me, it's quite cathartic, and it does help a lot.
Now, I've had the chance to talk to people involved in the Bernie Mac show, and basically they explain how such a great guy he was, and there's stuff that they wouldn't know about him ordinarily based on his performances. But as someone who obviously share their life with him, what would you tell people about him that maybe they wouldn't know?
I think for the most part, Bernard was, which that's my name, I called him because that was his real name, whereas most people call him Bernie, I called him Bernard. For the most part, Bernard was who you saw on stage. He was pretty much that guy, fun-loving, liked to joke all the time. But what I think people really didn't know that he was a very sensitive soul. He was quite sensitive. And even though he stood strong and you thought he was this big man, he could easily get his feelings hurt. Very easily he was hurt. Yeah, and I don't think most people know that about him. But for the most part, I think people knew he was a really nice guy, really funny guy. And honestly, he was so nice. He would give you the shirt off his back. That's just how nice he was.
And what would you like the audiences to take away from the film?
Well, for me, I think what they really will see and what I feel should be taken away is just how loved and just how great of a guy he was, because for me, all his peers that he worked with and all the good things they said about him spoke volumes on the person, his character, and who he was. So I think out of the documentary, they definitely will see that he was really a great human being, not just an entertainer, not just a comedian, but a really great, great human being.